Hey guys, this is Adam from Rescue Michigan. We're not live tonight. This is going to be recorded because I'm not sure I'm going to even want to upload it. I'm not sure what exactly I'm going to say in the next few minutes here, but I want to talk about the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. I want to talk about what's been going on these past few days, because I don't think, unless you've been watching the trial extremely closely, as I have these past 2 weeks, you probably don't see what I see coming in the trial as far as the outcome for Kyle. If you've been following the conservative media in the last few days, you probably think things have been going amazingly well. And things have been going well in terms of evidence. The prosecution's case was absolutely abysmal. Their witnesses got destroyed on cross-examination. Kyle Rittenhouse himself was spectacular in testifying in terms of his answers, holding his composure, not admitting to something he didn't do, always maintaining his innocence, and the fact that he had absolutely no recourse but to fire on people that were in the act of either attempting to murder him or giving him every reason to believe that that's what they were attempting to do. But a few things have happened. In particular, they happened in the past 24 hours that might have just saved the prosecution's case. And make no mistake, all else being equal, the prosecution has had the advantage in this case because American jurors often don't understand how important it is to assume innocence, to find guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, and people are convicted of things they don't do all the time in this country. And what's happened in the past 24 hours is the judge has opened the door for prosecutors to bring in absolute garbage evidence, and worse, give the jury the ability to consider the narrative for the prosecution's case. And I know you might be thinking this is all doom and gloom on my part. We're going to go through that in a minute, and you can decide for yourself whether or not my opinions about my interpretation about what the judge has done in the past day are going to be as impactful as they are. I guess soon enough we're going to find out. On Monday, the judge is going to there's going to be closing arguments. The judge is going to issue instructions to the jury. And probably on Monday, the judge is going to rule whether or not Kyle should have been charged with having an illegal firearm, which could have a huge impact in the jury's mindset. So Monday we're going to learn a lot, but then we don't know how long the jury is going to be out. Potentially they could go through Thanksgiving, but of course they probably won't want to. And that's when time pressure can really get to a jury. Let me back up and let me talk about what it means if Kyle is convicted before I tell you why I think this has now become a grave possibility. If you're not entirely familiar with the case of Kyle Rittenhouse, it started with the police shooting of Jacob Blake, who had an active arrest warrant, who was in the act of kidnapping his children, was pulled over by police, and was shot while attempting to retrieve a knife from his vehicle. Despite these facts, the lunatics in Black Lives Matter and Antifa decided that the shooting, which again, never wait for any kind of justice in that matter, immediately set upon Kenosha, Wisconsin, and rioted for days and nights on end, starting arson fires, burning down businesses, destroying millions of dollars in property, and terrorizing the people of Kenosha, Wisconsin. Because that's who they are. They're violent, they're destroyers, they don't wait for justice, they don't have any patience for that, they don't understand the facts, they don't care to know the facts. All they care about is politics, all they care about is fear, all they care about is dividing America. And if the riots in Kenosha, Wisconsin didn't illustrate that, I'm not sure what does. But then there was Kyle Rittenhouse, a 17-year-old who was asked to help defend a car lot. And Kyle brought a gun with him that day, which, despite the lies in the mass media, was not taken across state lines. The latest lie in the media has been that his mother drove him to Kenosha, which is completely untrue. It was his friend Dominic Black. They lied about that too. Even if Kyle was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and even if he had an illegal gun, that would not mean that he was compelled to surrender his life to people that put him in immediate mortal danger. But that's not important, because the jurors aren't going to understand that. They've been told for the last 14 months that Kyle shouldn't have been there, he shouldn't have had the gun, he provoked it just by being there, and on and on and on it went. Of course, the people that actually did attack him were the only people that he shot at. One of them, the first one, Joseph Rosenbaum, had just gotten out of the mental hospital, had been screaming and yelling and threatening to attack Kyle all night long. He said, if I get you alone, I'm going to kill you. He was heard saying on tape, shoot me N-word, shoot me N-word. Multiple witnesses identified him as being absolutely out of control and extremely dangerous. And according to the forensic evidence that came out of the trial, he had his hand over the barrel of Kyle's gun when he fired. Then the next person was Anthony Huber. Kyle was running towards police. He was actually struck by another protester, didn't lose his balance, ran a little further, stumbled and fell, was struck by a skateboard wielded by Anthony Huber. And then Huber went to retrieve his skateboard, and Kyle shot him in a single shot in his chest. Then Kyle got up, continued to go towards police. Then another one, Gage Grosskreutz, came at him, pretended to surrender by putting his hands up while he had a loaded Glock handgun in his hand, which he couldn't legally possess because he was also convicted of a gun charge. So he had an illegal gun himself in his hand, pointed at Kyle, which he admitted to on the witness stand. And then Kyle shot him in the bicep. Those were the three people killed or injured by Kyle Rittenhouse, one of whom had his hand on his gun, who threatened to kill him earlier that same night and said, when I get you alone, I'm going to kill you, and waited until Kyle was alone to lunge for his gun, according to witness testimony. Another who was armed with a skateboard, who had hit Kyle with a skateboard already, and a third who had a gun in his hand pointed at him when he fired a shot to neutralize him. Anyone who's done any research into use of self-defense, armed use of self-defense, has said Kyle's fortitude that night was incredible. His discipline was incredible. He only fired upon people who were posing an imminent mortal threat to him, and nobody else the entire time. That was a testimony of all of the eyewitnesses. So what happened today started yesterday. The prosecution tried to bring in brand new evidence that was not timely, that the defense had no time to review, which had been inadmissible for that reason alone, furnished to them by none other than, guess who? The FBI. And what they claimed was that the video showed that Kyle had pointed his gun at one of the suspects earlier, which, according to the prosecution, opens the door for saying that Kyle provoked them, and provocation nullifies self-defense. Problem is, their video shows absolutely nothing. It was so tiny, it was so grainy and so blurry that you can't see anything at all. The prosecution tried to attach an enlargement of the photo, which the defense's expert testified distorts the image. Because whenever you do pinch and zoom on a phone, a computer program uses AI to generate pixels, which makes the image improper, an improper representation of what they were seeing. The evidence should never have been admitted. The evidence doesn't actually show anything. And today the judge said, let the jury look at it and decide, and authorized instructions to the jury to say, you can consider this provocation if you think that's what happened. Why is this so critical? Because even if the jury looks at this evidence and says, I can't see anything in these photos, which you can't. They had a hearing for almost a half an hour today, going back and forth with the judge. The judge said he couldn't see anything in the photo. If he had done the right thing, he would have dismissed the evidence there again. He didn't. He said, let the jury see the evidence. The jury is going to come back on Monday, having spent the entire weekend supposedly isolated from news and not hearing about things like the National Guard being mobilized to Kenosha because their city might burn if they find him not guilty. Surely nobody will let them know that, right? And they're going to be thinking about everything they've heard in the media for the last 14 months. Kyle shouldn't have been there. And the prosecution in their closing statement, which they've asked for 2.5 hours to present, is going to say over and over again, he shouldn't have been there. He shouldn't have had the gun. He pointed the gun at them. In the back and forth, the prosecution, lying to the judge, says there's 5 or 6 clips of this. There was one video that was so tiny and so blurry, you couldn't see anything. They brazenly lied to the judge. But the defense dropped the ball. The judge was siding with them. And at the very end, the prosecution, as any smart lawyer does, repeated and repeated and repeated, this is clearly evidence that he pointed the gun. This is evidence that's admissible. The jury should see this, yada, yada, yada. And the judge goes to the defense, who had already spent a number of instances explaining to the judge, you can't see anything in this. And the defense goes, no, we're done. They didn't argue back. They didn't reinforce everything they just been through. Your Honor, you've seen this video over and over and over again. You've seen this still shot that you can't see anything in, which is actually a freeze frame of that video. In fact, some lawyers who were looking back and forth through the freeze frames said, looking at the video that was zoomed in, the image that was zoomed in versus the image that wasn't, they look like they're actually different frames. They're different enough, they look like they were different frames. This should have been absolutely inflammatory. You see these stories in the news. This is the story today. Look at this. This is what conservatives are being led to believe. And look, I like citizenfreepress.com. Rittenhouse judge erupts at Binger. Prosecutors think this photo will save their case. Well, the judge allowed it, so now it may save their case. Rittenhouse judge gets testy with prosecutor. Why do you have that look on your face? Yeah, the judge was a lot of talk and no action. When it actually mattered, the judge ruled in favor of the prosecution. This isn't the first time either. The mass media has been absolutely hysterical trying to impeach the judge. And the conservatives have been, praising him. Oh, he's so based. Oh, he's so great. Look at all these stories. It says, don't blame Judge Schroeder if Kyle Rittenhouse goes free, but because they're going to say that blame the jury. Polarizing judge lashes out. Bruce Schroeder makes racial comment. Yeah, he said, we have Asian food coming for lunch. That's their racial comment. Reputation is a tough jurist. And this goes on and on and on. Idiot judge still baffled by pinch to zoom. What to know about the judge? Judge faces backlash. Anger over the judge grows. And a full-on media campaign to impeach the judge. And of course, this has led to people saying, oh, well, he must be a really great judge. This shows you a lot about what's become, and is typical now of the conservative movement, that anything that's not absolutely leftist is some great friend of ours. No, what happened before the trial was the judge ruled against the prosecutor, who was introducing countless frivolous motions to poison the jury, because whatever you say in court pleadings, the media can report, so the story can get out. Prosecutor accuses Rittenhouse of this. Prosecutor accuses Rittenhouse of this. Judge doesn't allow Rittenhouse to see this, and this, and this. All of which are absolutely frivolous motions. Is that our standard now? Our standard is if a judge actually doesn't, excludes completely illegal evidence, he's on our side. Because here's what the judge actually did today and yesterday. He allowed the jury to consider evidence that never should have been admitted. It wasn't timely, it's not probative, it's highly prejudicial, and it opens the door for jurors to be thinking about things they're not supposed to be thinking about. Because the question is whether or not Kyle was acting in self-defense, and that goes to his state of mind. And they've been able to poison the case by saying, hey, you might be able to consider the fact that Kyle actually provoked him, even though no witnesses testified to it. The guy that brought in the evidence, who authenticated it, was never even qualified as an expert witness. And on the stand, he says, they ask him, do you know how the computer program assigned what these pixels were? No, I don't know. Half the guy's questions were, I don't know. And where was Kyle's legal defense? AWOL, as they've been for most of this case. If anybody has caused Kyle to lose, that causes him to burn and probably be murdered in prison, it'll be his defense lawyers. His defense lawyers have been despicable from the start of this trial to the finish. The day before jury selection, what do? They fire the small army of lawyer volunteers and experts to vet the jurors. Instead of ensuring they knew who the politically motivated jurors were, they went in there blind. They got a blind jury, a random jury, which right there alone could be fatal to his case. Then Kyle Rittenhouse took the stand, which every lawyer has said is an extremely risky move. Anything Kyle said could have cost him that case. And as the prosecutor is browbeating him, repeatedly asking for hearsay evidence, repeatedly attacking him for opinion statements, everything that should be impeachable, his defense lawyers sat there and did nothing. No objections. And as the lawyers are watching this, if you go to Nick Rekieta's show on YouTube, 70,000 people are watching a panel of 9 lawyers talking about the case as it's happening in real time. All of them are absolutely boggled Like Kyle's attorneys didn't step in for him, didn't step in to protect him. And by some miracle, Kyle was as sharp on that jury stand as he was in Kenosha that night, and never incriminated himself, and always said the right thing. But had they not even called him, they might not even have this last-minute evidence brought in. The prosecution blew their own case. Their own witnesses got torn apart in cross-examination. But they brought enough witnesses and bought enough time for the prosecution to bring this last-minute trick play in. And the judge allowed it. Yesterday on the stand, as soon as Kyle takes the stand, the prosecution begins attacking Kyle for remaining silent. And the judge blows up at the prosecution. And that's this great thing, right? Except he didn't act on it. He hasn't acted on it yet. He might call a mistrial. It doesn't look that way. He says, oh, let's let the jury decide. That's been his attitude this whole time. And then literally 5 minutes later, the prosecution tries to bring in evidence the judge has already ruled inadmissible. And the judge screams at him. But like a typical judge, no sanctions, nothing happens. The browbeating of the prosecutor happened when the jury was not in the room, so they didn't hear it, they didn't see it. It's like it never happened for them. Some great judge brings in evidence that is transparently worthless, transparently shows nothing, transparently prejudicial to the jury. That's our great judge. Closing remarks are the last thing that can save Kyle right now. That or some really tough, really principled, really smart jurors, which, pray for him. But keep in mind, 1 in 100 Americans doesn't know who the father of the Constitution is. These are people who are not trained in complex legal issues, don't think like lawyers do, and don't understand exactly how they're being manipulated. If the defense is really good and really smart on closing arguments, they can put that in the jurors' minds. Here's the other thing. The defense's opening statements sucked. The only thing the defense has been any good at this entire time has been cross-examination. They're fact lawyers. They're not good at legal objections. They're not good at law in general. And they're absolutely terrible at crafting a narrative. They haven't framed the issue properly. And I don't think they're going to in the closing arguments. To help the jury understand exactly how high the threshold is for them to convict Kyle. Maybe I'll be impressed. I doubt it. Nothing I've seen in this trial gives me any confidence in Kyle's legal defense. They have screwed up from the get-go. Because lawyer Richards wants all the credit. And to push everyone else that was offering expert advice, people who are experts in things, out of the room. And frankly, a lot of things the defense should have brought in, they never did. Prosecution's trying to claim that striking someone with a skateboard is not attacking them and posing any lethal threat to them. They should have brought in an expert on skateboards to say, here's a skateboard. You see this thing, these trucks, these big, heavy pieces of metal that are really thick because people jump on top of them and they can't bend or break? And if you swing it like a baseball bat, it strikes like a hammer at someone's skull and can pulverize it? No. No expert to say that a skateboard can easily be a lethal weapon. Unflippin' believable. And here's the reality, folks. This is what happens if Kyle's convicted. Everyone in the mass media will be calling Kyle a murderer. They will call everyone that defended Kyle defenders of murderers. For the 14 months this trial's been pending, the conservative media said nothing about Kyle. They were all too afraid. They didn't know what they were going to say. Until last week when the trial started looking good for Kyle, suddenly they start swooping and talking about the case. If Kyle's convicted, they're going to run for the hills too. But here's what's going to happen if Kyle's convicted. It will be open season. It will be the legalization of lynching. Kyle went to Kenosha with a gun for self-defense and a medical bag and walked out the entire day trying to help people, trying to do the job that the government failed to do. Cleaning up graffiti, administering medical aid, putting out fires. That's what got the people's attention. That's what drew them to try to murder him that night. Was that when Joseph Rosenbaum lit a dumpster on fire and was pushing it towards a gas station to blow it up. Kyle put out the fire. Because the fire department didn't do it. He was a good Samaritan his entire night. His entire life. He was trying to be a cop or a medic or a firefighter. That's what he wanted to do, was help people, to protect people. And what were they all there doing that night? Trying to burn down the city. And when Kyle stood in their way, they tried to murder him. And Kyle's crime was protecting his life. This was a lynch mob. This was a lynch mob that's mad at Kyle because he didn't die that night, and they want him dead. So they want him in prison where he can be murdered. And if he is acquitted, they want to kill more people. They want to terrorize more people. The National Guard's been called a Kenosha. That's who they are. They're murderers, terrorists. They're destroyers. Kyle is a protector, and they're destroyers. And the prosecution knows that. They're destroyers too. And if a 17-year-old is sent to prison to die for protecting his life against a lethal threat because of the incompetence of his defense counsel and the incompetence of the judge and the evil, evil prosecutors who are sworn not to put people behind bars. That's not their job. Their job is to protect justice. Their job is to serve justice. And when everything they know about this kid is that he acted in self-defense, that all their witnesses are terrorists and pedophiles and liars, their duty is to drop the charges. And if Kyle's convicted, nobody is safe. Nobody is safe in this country. Look at these people on Twitter last night. Let's be clear. Look at these people on Twitter. This is the mentality of a lynch mob. This is what this guy posts. Let's be clear. If a black 17-year-old had crossed state lines, which Kyle didn't do, to arm himself with an illegally acquired assault rifle, which he didn't do, attended a MAGA rally, picked a fight, which he didn't do, and shot 3 people, this trouble here for formality. He'd be in prison for life. Yeah, well, you moron. Well, that's not what he did. You liar. You idiot. There's 2 things about lynch mobs. One is they're murderers. Second is they're proud of it. They're proud to be murderers. That's what makes it a lynch mob. That's what makes them so intrinsically evil. That's what these people are. They're proud of what they do. Well, look at this. Totally unrelated cases that they have no clue what they're even talking about. Combat veteran here, just a perspective. If you arrive armed to a place where violence is happening, prepared for violence, you engage in violence, there is no self-defense. You're a moron, Kenneth Ray McCain. You don't know anything about self-defense law. Nothing. You idiot. Kyle had every right to be there as much as the looters did, as much as the rioters did, as much as the arsonists did. And even if he didn't, you don't forfeit your right to defend your life. Look at these morons. The only who cares an AR-15 and lies about being an EMT. You fucking idiot! Someone asks, are you an EMT? Says yes, because he wants to administer a medical aid. He wasn't lying, he was exaggerating. Telling people what they need to hear. Hey, you want help? I'll give you help. You piece of shit, Don Winslow. Melissa Tate, what does she say? Oh, she's a good one. Good. What's this one saying? Why are we just glazing over the fact that Kyle Rittenhouse's mother put her minor in a child vehicle? Because she didn't, you fucking liar! You fucking idiot liar! Same fucking moron here. What's Karigna? She said, he's a famous liar. Judge Schor is beyond being biased in this trial, acting as a defense attorney for the suspected white supremacist murder. You liar! Nothing Kyle did was ever suggest he's a white supremacist. What the fuck is this photo? Making an okay sign? You fucking retards? That's the okay sign, and you know it is. You're liars. What, his shirt says free as fuck? Because you just got out of jail after spending 2 months in jail? Something wrong with that? Being happy you're released from jail? These sick people. These sick people. They are destroyers. They are proud of themselves. If they feel a little scared, no, retard. No, he didn't open fire if he felt a little scared. Like he probably felt scared the whole night and never even raised his rifle until people tried to murder him. Look at this idiot. At a racially tense demonstration in 2021 America, nothing says I'm not looking for trouble like a white boy, racist, with an AR-15 slung over his shoulder. No, it doesn't. He's not 18. He can't carry a concealed pistol. He's protecting himself. As he was smart to do. As he was smart to do, because he's there to put out fires and clean up graffiti, and the mob wanted to brutalize him for it, if not kill him outright. These pieces of garbage. And this goes to Kyle's defense lawyers right here, allowing his mom to go on television in the middle of the trial. You idiots. Every lawyer in this trial should be disbarred, prosecutors and defense lawyers. Defense lawyers for extreme malpractice and the prosecution for knowingly and maliciously bringing in false evidence to compromise the case. These sick people. 4 years ago, I was talking to a buddy of mine in the legislature. We were both working there. And I was telling him about a nightmare I've had. We have this occasionally. I had it recently. I was talking to him about it. So you ever had that nightmare where you're in some kind of immediate threat, but you're somehow paralyzed, you can't move, you can't do anything about it, whatever it is, for whatever reason. It's a dream, so it's all very metaphorical and vague, but you know what I'm talking about, right? That dream you have, where there's some kind of real threat in front of you, and you can't do anything. It's like, yeah, I know that feeling. It's like, you have that feeling about the Republicans in 2018, which is, of course, what came to pass. There's nothing we can do for Kyle. I donated to Kyle Legal's defense fund maybe a year ago. Until I found out his lawyers at the time were absolute grifters. John Pierce and Lynn Wood, who are now actively sabotaging the defenses for some of the January 6th people. Kyle's legal defense team took the money that was a sacred trust from his supporters who believed he had a legal defense worth fighting for, or at least that he deserved a legal defense. Some people lost their jobs for it because criminals stole the information and leaked it to the media. Police officers lost their jobs for giving Kyle Rittenhouse's legal defense fund $25. Think about that. That sacred trust that every one of Kyle's donors put in, giving their money to him for his help. This is the legal defense his lawyers mustered. Firing people that were willing to work for free to make sure you don't have a biased jury. Then dropping the ball day after day on objections. And then, at the moment when it mattered the most, when the prosecution tries to save its case by introducing false evidence, when the judge looks to the defense lawyers, thinking he's going to side with them, and the defense lawyers, instead of driving home the point like any smart person would do, repeat your case, sum it all up, lay it all out there, frame it. Judge, this is crazy. No, I think we made our point. That was how they rested their case, on that argument, on that evidence. And the judge let it in. And the judge issued instructions to the jury, allowing them to consider that maybe Kyle was provoked, even though no actual evidence exists for it. These people should be ashamed of themselves. The judge, the defense team, and the prosecution. I'm not sure who should be the most ashamed. Probably the defense attorneys. Prosecution, evil as they are doing what they probably take to be their job. Even though their job is actually administering justice, they take their job to be getting a conviction, which is embarrassing. But what are we all supposed to do? We're just watching this. Well, all I can say is I hope, based on the outcome of this, you all take this under advisement about how grave American liberty is. The right to self-defense is on trial here. The right to the Second Amendment itself is on trial here. All this yammering about Kyle having an illegal gun that wasn't under Wisconsin law. Maybe the judge will dismiss that charge. Maybe. I doubt it. This judge is a coward. And the defense is a bunch of sniveling sheep. They're just like Republican politicians. They let the left be their doormat. So take under advisement how grave the situation is. I hope maybe you didn't need that. Maybe you see what's happening to the economy. Maybe you see what's happening to our military. Maybe you see what's happening to our civil liberties. And I hope you all, at least, whatever happens, resolve to do better and do more and do everything you can to fight for our lives, because our republic is down to the last strands, the last vestiges of our liberty. of our criminal justice system, of the right to the presumption of innocence, of the right to competent counsel. And remember the conservative media, too, in all this. They let the left set the stage for 14 months. Now that the judge has been issuing fair decisions, or was issuing fair decisions, the left is lighting him up for no legitimate reason. And if Kyle's convicted, they're all going to run and cower and be bowled over like the cowards they've always been. I'll tell you, I learned a lot about J.D. Vance this past week. He stuck up for Kyle publicly, something no candidate would normally do. Because why step into a controversial issue if you don't have to? Kudos to J.D. Vance for saying something. But notice all the politicians that won't. Notice the politicians that let the left control the narrative. That instead of screaming from the rooftops, what a travesty of justice this is. What a travesty. But Kyle, who did everything right, who tried to protect Kenosha when the government failed, and protected his life when he had to, and did so in the most amazingly successful way. He could have fired into a crowd. He could have been when he had PTSD the moment he fired that first shot. His discipline and only pulling that trigger when his life was in immediate harm right in front of him. It was incredible. And he withstood the most brutal cross-examination from the prosecution that any 18-year-old, he's 18 now, could ever be expected. And his lawyers sat there and watched him take it as the prosecution brought improper line of questioning over and over and over again. This trial's been a disgrace. What's happening to Kyle right now is a disgrace. Pray for Kyle. That's all you can do. Pray the jurors reach the right decision. That's all you can do. Pray the defense team somehow comes to their senses. Although in my experience, I've never seen pressure make a hero, and this defense team has been an embarrassment from the start to the finish. So I'm sorry, folks. I don't know what point I have to make here, other than we have to double down in our efforts to save our country, because it's falling away fast. Fast. And whatever happens, tell the truth about Kyle. Tell the truth about Lucas Gerhard, who's facing a 20-year prison sentence for a non-crime, for joking. Joking, his gun would melt snowflakes. That's how corrupt our justice system is. That the disgraces we call judges in Lucas's case, the district judge, the circuit judge, 3 Court of Appeals judges, have failed to reach even simple conclusions of law, to the point that a judge like Judge Schrader can be considered a right-wing based judge just because he ruled against the prosecutor's most egregious attempts to destroy his rights. That's the norm we're settling for in a judicial system. Shame on all of them. Shame on everyone that hasn't been speaking out, especially if you have a platform. And shame on the platforms, too. Shame on GoFundMe for denying Kyle's ability to raise money for his own legal defense. I created a GoFundMe for Lucas Gerhard before this thing happened with Kyle. That's the only reason the GoFundMe still exists for him. The only reason I didn't take it down right when that happened is because then it would look like he was back at zero for how much money he's raised. And that's a bad impression to give people. So Lucas Gerhard's legal defense is still on GoFundMe. Shame on Facebook. Shame on Twitter. What was that piece of garbage publication? I think it was CBS. They're in a story saying Kyle admitted to murder on the stand. Those liars! Understand what these people are. They're a lynch mob, ready to spring on anybody they can. If they get Kyle, they're not going to be finished. They're going to be putting more in their sights. And if we don't speak out, shame on us. Shame on us all. I don't know how to end this, guys. I don't know how to end this. Sorry if you've been blackpilled by this. If you want to learn more, watch Nick Rekieta's streams. He's been covering the trial intensely for the past 2 weeks, something like 12 hours a day. Live coverage from start to finish with real experts talking about what's really been going on. If this is all news to you, get better news sources. This is sad, guys. This is a travesty of justice in the making. It's not just Kyle. It's all of us. These fuckers on Twitter attacking Kyle for crying on the stand, accusing him of fake crying. Do these people have any idea what's in Kyle's mind right now? Besides the trauma, having to take life, someone who spent his whole life training to protect people, had to protect himself. Not only that, but that if he's found guilty, he'll spend the rest of his life in jail, probably cut short, probably murdered in jail. What that's going to do to his mother, what that's going to do to his family. And if he's found not guilty, the mob's going to come in for Kenosha again, and maybe take more life. What a thing for a 17-year-old, now an 18-year-old to have to bear. Kyle Rittenhouse is a great American. A great American. And shame on anybody that can't muster their words to say that. Shame on every politician that can't muster their words to say that. To say that. I know they're too busy trying to win office, and saying something like that would be risky because the voters might understand. The reason why Republicans lose is because you let the Democrats frame the issues. I saw a webpage for a guy running for Congress today. I'll spare him the embarrassment of saying his name. But I noticed the guy didn't put the word Republican anywhere on his website, even though he's running as a Republican. You know why? Because polls find that Republican doesn't test well in polls. Yeah? Well, that's because you don't defend the brand, you idiots. Why should we support people like that? Why should we support people that cower in silence because they're afraid to lose their election? And let us lose in the long term because they can't defend principles, they can't stand up for truth, they can't take on the media, and then when elected, they can't even use the bully pulpit they're given. They have the privilege of representing 90,000 people in the state house if they're a state rep, 250,000 if they're a state senator. Then they don't use they don't use that access to the press to defend these vital issues. Fuck all of them. All right, guys. I don't know where to end on this other than that and to say our country's in peril. Our country's in awful, awful peril. I have a pit in the bottom of my stomach right now, thinking about the future of our country, thinking about the people we have in this country compared to the people we had in 1776, who pledged their lives, their liberty, their sacred honor to stand up for liberty. In the face of what has ultimately had been less of a loss than we have now. A government that now takes a third of our livelihoods. A government that now regulates everything we do, that taxes everything more than Britain ever dreamed it could. And if those people had lost the revolution, they would have been executed. Their families would have lost their fortunes. They would have been left impoverished. They put themselves and their families on the line for this country. And what do? I don't even want to get into what I've seen coming from some of the so-called grassroots these past few days, pointing fingers about who they think is a rhino, and they don't even know half the story. I got a text from more than 4 people this week complaining about a bill that they had completely wrong in what it actually did. They forwarded it on because they didn't even think to look at the bill and check their facts before they forwarded it. That's the fortitude of the people we've got now. They pass along rumors and false statements without even looking at what they are. Our state's on the line, our country's on the line. You guys can't even do homework. I hope this is a wake-up call for people that we need to be better. We need to be better. I'm not talking about, you personally, the viewer. I'm not talking about you personally. I don't know where, you're different people. You can't say anything about any one of you. But I hope you all resolve. Work harder. Be better. Do more. Learn what works. Do the things you don't want to do. Get out of your comfort zone. Do the things that are hard to save our country, not the things that are easy. Things that are easy are squawking on Facebook and Twitter. Things that are hard are knocking on doors and talking to neighbors and learning how to educate people and inform people in a way that's effective. Because that's the only way we're going to save our country. It's the only way we're going to save our state. Is if we do better than we did last year. Better than we did even in 2016. even in 2018. Because if we don't do better, the best we can hope for is a Republican sweep in which we elect another new crop of rhinos. As the left advances their arguments, as the left advances what they think is normal, as the left normalizes lockdowns, the left normalizes looting and rioting and burning and killing, and lynching people who dare to stand up for freedom and for peace, and yes, even for property. Kyle didn't shoot someone to protect property. He shot someone to protect himself, as he was in the act of being murdered for daring to stand in the way of the mob. If Kyle Rittenhouse is going to be burned for that and lynched for that, then Kyle's a better man than you or me. I usually sign off by saying, thanks for all you guys do for liberty. All I can say tonight is, I hope you all do more. Whatever you're doing, I hope you do more. Until next time, guys. Peace.